Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another IFAS AI and Data Science seminar. Today we have Dr. Zhao. He's an associate professor of animal science and UT Ag Research Guthrie Endowed Professor of Precision Livestock Farming at the University of Tennessee. His research focuses on precision livestock farming and poultry production, addressing critical challenges related to poultry environment, behavior, and welfare. Dr. Zhao has held leadership roles within the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers, serving as chair, vice chair, secretary, and committee member for multiple professional and award committees. He also serves as an associate editor for transactions at the SAB. Beyond his research, Dr. Zhao is deeply committed to mentoring the next generation of scientists, having mentored 10 graduate students and 20 undergrads on poultry research projects. And he also serves as the faculty advisor for the University of Tennessee Poultry Science Club. So please welcome Dr. Zhao.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madras, for your introduction. And I've been working with poultry for quite a long time, and just I learned from Dr. Madras that we have a large background, different background from the audience. I just want to give you some terminology here before I start talking about poultry, because like broiler chicken. So broiler means the chickens that we use for meat production. So the chicken legs, breast meat, or whole chicken we can buy from grocery store. They are from broiler chicken, right? And also we have a laying hens. So those birds we use to produce eggs, right? And also besides the broiler and laying hens, we have breeder chickens. So breeders are, we use them to produce fertile eggs, which are used to, hatch into broiler chicken or laying hens. Okay, so just some terminology here. So actually I've been working on different aspects on poultry production, poultry research. During my master time, I looked at how farm management affect the poultry behaviors. And during my PhD and postdoc, I focused on measuring air pollutant, air quality from poultry production. And about 10 years ago, I started looking at the precision livestock farming for poultry, and started using some sensors, AI tools to monitor the animal-based measures. So, but my work in this area is really applied. So I'm not be able to develop new sensors or AI architectures, but rather than that, so I really use the existing technologies to help solve a practical problem in poultry production. So I'm really glad to be here today and share some of my experience and interact with you who may know me AI more deeply, and hopefully we can have some collaborations in the future. So, and just for those who have never been inside the commercial broiler house, so the photos in this background shows a typical one in the US. So you can see the feeder line, the water line, the heater, some light bulbs, and the birds, of course, which are raised on the floor system at a pretty high stocking density, right? So I just want to talk about a little bit of background on poultry industry. So this figure here shows you the global meat production over the past 50 years. And you can see that the production of all major meat proteins has increased quite a bit during this period of time. But the most striking growth has been in poultry. So back in early 1970s, poultry meat production was only about, see, the half of the pork and beef. But in recent years, you see, it actually become the most produced meat protein in the world. And personally, I still prefer beef over poultry when it's come to taste. But from an efficiency standpoint, poultry is hard to beat. So when we talk about the animal production, it's very important, when we talk about efficiency in animal production, so we really mean the feed to meat conversion, so which is the amount of feed required to produce 1 pound of meat, right? So for beef, we need about 6 to 9 pounds of feed to produce 1 pound of meat. So that's 6 to 1 or 9 to 1, right? For pork, it's 3 to 1. And for poultry, the feed conversion ratio is just 2 to 1. So that's very efficient. Okay. And the United States has historically been leading the poultry meat production. So in 2024, the US produced over 21 million tons of poultry meat, accounting for about 21% of the global production. So while most of this meat, poultry meat is consumed domestically, roughly about 17% is exported. And then Brazil and China each produce around 15 million tons. So together, these 3 countries alone account for about half of the world poultry meat production. Okay. And in Tennessee, the poultry is the #1 agriculture commodity. It generates annual cash receipts around $1.1 billion. So this includes not only the broiler chicken, but also the broiler breeders. Okay. So the state has facility of 2 major broiler breeder companies, AVGN and Cobb-Mantries, which hold the genetics for over 90% of the meat type poultry. And it's not official, but it's estimated that about 50% of the broilers consumed worldwide can trace their genetics back to Tennessee. So the poultry industry is a very important sector in Tennessee. And when I joined UT in 2020, the state ranked 15 in broiler production nationally. And since then, production has been expanding in Tennessee, and especially with Tyson Foods building a large complex in Midwest Tennessee. And now, Tennessee ranked 7th in the national broiler production. And as for Florida, you have a very large and diverse agriculture sector. And I could not find the most recent data, but this figure shows the 2022 cash receipt for major agriculture commodities in the state. And at the top, we can see the vegetable, melon, field crops, floriculture, etc. And in the animal production sector, milk, cattle, and calf are leading. Poultry is not as large as other commodities in this list, but still made a significant contribution and generated about 330 million in cash receipts. Okay, and now, while the production and the demands for poultry products has been increasing, producers have been facing some significant challenges. And one big challenge is the labor. Right? So the US has severe shortage of local agriculture workers. And as a result, producers are depending more and more on foreign labor. Okay, so if you can look at the figure on the left, you will see the trend over the past 15 years. So both the number of foreign agricultural workers and the number of applications have been rising sharply. And by 2024, there were about 380,000 foreign agricultural workers in the US. And that's not the full story. And a recent article suggests that the real number is around 1.2 million, and with majority being undocumented. So this just to give you some idea about the scale of shortage in the agricultural labor force in the US. And at the same time, the scale of poultry production itself has been expanding. So this figure here shows you the average broiler house size in the US in the past 50 years. And by 2011, the house size had nearly doubled as compared to 50 years ago. Right? So this data is from USDA, and they stopped the statistics after 2011. But perhaps some of you know that this trend has continued, and it's not uncommon nowadays to see new broiler houses larger than 3,000 square meters. So that's about 30,000 square feet. Okay, so from economic standpoint, that makes sense because it's lower the capital cost on per bird basis. But of course, a larger house means more birds need to be taken care of. That adds another layer of workload for the producers who have already been stretched thin. Now, in addition to their daily routine, the producers also have to combat disease outbreaks. For example, in 2014 to 15, the US had a devastating outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza, which affected 50 million birds. And then in just the past 3.5 years, another 160, 170 million birds were affected by the HPAI. So to stay in the business, producers have to adopt a much stricter biosecurity measures. For instance, this photo here shows a group of workers are disinfecting their vehicle before it leaves their farm. And well, this measure sometimes work, but definitely not always, right? So let's say if the infection does occur at a farm, then the poultry producers have to deal with massive depopulation and disposal. For instance, this photo here shows the forklifts are removing dead birds from an infected laying hen farm, and this is the turkey farmer composting the birds lost to HPAI. So these are all the additional work that the producers have to do. And nowadays, the poultry producers also need to adapt their management for better poultry welfare. So this could mean system-wide change for laying hens, or adding the enrichment, increasing light growth rate, or lower the stocking density for broader chicken. Okay? So some of these changes can be positive for both poultry welfare and production efficiency. For instance, we know that if the birds have better welfare, they spend less energy on battling stress, just like our human being, right? And they may produce more efficiently. But some other changes, they don't always align well with production efficiency. For instance, the broader production typically use kind of a dark lighting environment, which prevents the birds to become too active. So that farmers believe that is better for the feed conversion ratio. But if we tell a poultry producer to increase the light so the birds can see better, they might have some concern that the brighter light may increase the bird activity and eventually compromise their feed conversion. So in the broader industry in the US, the feed conversion is directly tied to the paycheck of the broader growers. So it's a real concern. And agriculture is also under some pressure from something more fundamental. Like this map here shows the farmland loss in Tennessee in recent years. On average, Tennessee lost 64,000 acres of farmland every year. And Tennessee has 95 counties, and some counties lost between 10 to 23% of its farmland within less than a decade. So that's significant. And the main reason is because of the state development. And well, unfortunately, although agriculture is crucial for providing the food and protein, it doesn't get the priority when it comes to the land use, right? And Florida will be likely to face similar challenges with farmland loss. So I came across this data from a report by the UF Center for Landscape Conservation Planning and 1,000 Friends of Florida. So according to this report, the state had 12 million acres of farmland in 2023, spread across Florida. And it predicts that by 2070, farmland could drop below 10 million acres. So mainly due to the sea level rise and ongoing development. So no, that would represent an 18.3% total loss, which is roughly 120 acres per day or 45,000 acres per year. So that's also significant. And this issue just isn't just limited to Florida and Tennessee. It's a global challenge, right? So it means that we will need to produce agriculture product, including poultry, on less usable land, which make efficiency, more important than ever. Now, so how can we improve the efficiency in poultry production? Now, one promising approach is precision livestock farm, or PLF. And PLF aims to use advanced technologies to monitor the animals in real time and assist the farmers with decision making. And actually, the research and development of PLF has made considerable progress over the past 2 decades to help improve farm management, poultry welfare, and productivity. So on the research side, this figure here shows you the number of publications in PLF that I searched on the Google Scholar. So the blue bars represent the PLF publication of all animal species. So you can see that the number of publications increased exponentially in the past 2 decades, especially in the past 10 years, right? So similarly for PLF publications in the poultry sector, which is represented by this red bar here, we also see a significant increase. So the research is definitely the great first step to achieve the goal of PLF, but eventually we want to end up with some commercialized PLF products that can benefit the end user, which are the animal producers, right? So fortunately, for poultry sector, there are several commercialized products. For instance, the IoT farm system that integrated the on-farm sensors and report the data to farmers and to help them manage their facility. There are also some poultry robots that can walk the birds, perform disinfection, and till the bedding material or the litter. So, and also some poultry producers, they are using feed weighing system and the bird weighing system to measure the feed consumption and bird body weight, which are the 2 parameters to calculate the feed conversion ratio. So there are also some camera-based system out there for bird health, behavior, and production monitoring. So with these exciting products in mind, I was also curious about how these products would compare to the PLF product that are being used in other animal sectors, right? So that will help tell us where the poultry is among the overall PLF. So I asked my research associate to search for commercialized products in poultry, cattle, and swine. So eventually she found a total of 71 products, PLF products. And you can see that 57% of this product are for cattle, 27% are for swine, and only 17% are for poultry. So this search might not capture, all the PLF products, but it gives a good overview on how PLF is applied across different species. And clearly, poultry lags behind, right? So that makes sense in several ways. For instance, the PLF started earlier in other animal sectors, like the first widespread application was probably the individual electronic milk meter for dairy cattle. That's back to 1970s, right? And also larger animals have greater individual values. So it makes economic sense to invest in sensors for these large animals. But a broader chicken, by comparison, is worth less than $4. So there's no way to justify spending, $100 sensor for a single bird for commercial production, right? So this just a few reasons why PLF adoption in PLF has lagged behind. But this gap also creates some opportunities for the poultry researchers to develop unique technologies that specifically tailored for this industry. So, but that brings up another question. So what are the unique needs and challenges of the current poultry industry to adopt PLF technologies. Now, to understand this question, we conducted surveys to identify and understand their needs, challenges, and barriers associated with the development of broader adoption of PLF technology within the broader industry. So this survey consists of two main components: an academic survey and an industry survey. So the academic survey was conducted by my former graduate student, Tanner Thornton. So it involved over 200 individuals working in poultry research and extension within the field, such as poultry science, animal science, agriculture, engineering, and veterinary medicine. And the industry survey was led by my colleague, Dr. Robert Burns, and his student. And it involved over 500 poultry producers in Tennessee. So when the survey participants were asked about their familiarity with precision livestock farming, the result shows a significant difference between academic and industry respondents. So in the academic survey, 92% of the respondents indicated some degree of familiarity with PLF. And in contrast, in the industry survey showed a much lower percentage of respondents familiar with this term. So this difference is understandable as PLF research in the US began earlier in academia, but only in recent years have conference, workshop, seminar trainings starting involving the poultry producers in their events. Now, although the producers' familiarity with PLF is low, they demonstrate very strong willingness to learn PLF. So this result indicates that 38% of the respondents are extremely likely to attend a PLF workshop, and 42% are somewhat likely to attend. And there's only 11% of the respondents express no interest in such a workshop. Okay. And the above discussion focused on the familiarity with the PLF, but when it comes to the actual usage of PLF technology, the story is quite different. So while 92% of the academic respondents claim familiarity with PLF, only 55% reported using the PLF technologies. So for producers, the usage is even lower, and only about 60% reported that they are currently using certain type of PLF system. So clearly, knowing about PLF doesn't necessarily translate into a widespread use, especially for the producers. Right? And when we ask the academics about what the technology they are using, so their top 5 answers were temperature sensor, humidity sensor, visual camera, thermal camera, and gas sensors. So we see a good spread of technology covering the thermal environment, the poultry welfare and behavior, and air environment, right? So for the producers, they are also using temperature sensor, humidity sensor, but also some other system to monitor their feed and water intake and to manage their data, right? So all the technology used by the producers focus on the production or the thermal environment, which directly affect the production. So when we ask about what are the most important productivity indicators in poultry production, both academics and industry respondents agree that weight gain and feed and water intake are the top 2. And the difference came in the third indicator. So the academic respondent highlight the bird activity as important, but the producers highlighted the foot pad health as important. Actually, this makes sense because 20 years ago, the chicken feed were not worth much in the US, so people don't eat it, and there's no market here in the US. But with the growing demands for chicken feed in Asia, US poultry producers are now making a good profit from exporting them to Asia. So keeping the bird feed healthy has become a major priority, which explains why the food pet health show up on the industry's top 3 lists. And when they were asked about the important welfare indicator, the academic responders selected food pet health, bird activity, and gait score. And all these 3 are typical welfare indicators in poultry research and extension. But the producers definitely have a different interpretation on the welfare indicators. And on their list, water and feed intake and weight gain are still on the top. So these are actually the productivity indicator they just selected, right? And their third choice is the bird activity. So this difference probably means that the producer's interpretation of welfare is to first meet the bird's basic need in food and water, right? But academia more focused on something that beyond this basic need. And we also asked the participants on their agreement on several PLF-related statements. So when we asked whether the usability, learning process, and cost of the PLF would influence farmers' decision to adopt PLF technology, and majority of the respondents agree with these statements. And especially, over 90% of the respondents identified cost as a significant factor affecting the PLF adoption by the producers, right? And when we asked whether PLF allows farmers to have more social or free time, the responses were mixed, right? So while farmers may spend less time directly working with the birds, they may still have to spend some additional time to monitor the data and maintain the PLF system. And also we asked if the PLF could replace farmer in the barn. Most respondents disagree with this statement. So this means the human oversight and decision-making will still be needed in poultry management, but probably in a different way. Another question we asked the producer was whether they need to see a PLF technology in action on a farm before committing to it. So as you can see here, most of the producers agree with this statement. So this tells us that producers are very cautious about investing in PLF. So they want to be convinced that this technology is actually working before putting money into it. So we have actually asked the producers over 30 questions. I will not be able to list all the questions here, but this is just the survey. So as we develop the PLF technologies, so hopefully this data, this result could give us a better idea about how we can make that technology practical and align with the producer's needs. So then I want to talk about some example of PLF research in poultry. So we received a grant to develop a computer vision system for automatically estimate the gait score in broiler chicken. So basically, the gait score is the welfare indicator that reflects the walking ability in broiler chicken. Okay. So our goal was to create 2 systems. One to determine the average gait score at the flock level, and another to determine the gait score of individual birds. So the flock level system works by continuously tracking the movement of the birds. So this green bounding box in the video shows this tracking. And from there, we isolate some moving bird pixel as shown in the black and white video. So using this information, we can determine the distribution and activity pattern of this bird within the field of view. So finally, by integrating some factors such as body weight, activity level, distribution pattern, and bird age into a statistical model, we can estimate the flock level gait score. So since not all the broader farmers use a weighing scale to determine the bird body weight. So we actually developed 2 models to accommodate different farm setups. So one model incorporates the body weight for farms with the weighing scale, and the other is designed for farmers without this equipment. Now, in this model, we use the bird age as a key factor due to its strong correlation with the body weight. And my UT colleague, Dr. Hao Gan, so who is actually the lead PI on this project. So he was leading the system for gait score estimate for individual birds. So his algorithm was able to identify the moving birds in the video and segment the birds. And then he trained a deep learning model to detect the 7 key points of the birds. And then he kept tracking the target birds for a few seconds. And based on the movement of all these key points, he developed another lightweight model for gait score prediction. And the figure on the right just shows you the trajectory of the key points in the 60 frames. And here are just a few videos with detected key points to demonstrate the gait score estimate for individual birds. So this bird here was assigned with a score 0, gait score 0. So basically 0 means there's no walking difficulty for the birds. Okay, so this bird here was assigned with a gait score 1. So we can see a little bit hesitation of this bird when it works. Okay, so this bird here was assigned with a gait score 2. So you can see this bird wobbling when it's working. Okay. And this bird definitely has some difficulty in walking. So it was assigned with a gait score 3. Okay, so the accuracy of this gait score estimate is around 94-95%, which is pretty good. And on commercial farm, there are always a lot of birds. So we want to collect the data from as many as possible to get a representative picture of the flock, right? So that's why, having lightweight model and faster image processing speed is important. So we can see here that for gait score classification model, the speed of model is pretty quick. So it can process 40 frames in less than 0.1 second. So this makes it possible to monitor large flocks in real time. Now, with this gait score data produced by this computer vision system, we were able to explore how the management practice affect this important welfare indicator. So one major concern in the poultry industry is that fast growth rate in broiler chicken can compromise their welfare, right? So in a project funded by US Poultry and Egg Association, we look at how growth rate affect the gait score, and we compare the slow growing, medium growing, and standard or fast growing birds when they reached 3 kilograms of body weight. So as you can see in this figure, that the slow growing birds had better, has lower gait score or better walking ability, right? So this is a positive from welfare standpoint. However, it took 62 days for the slow growing birds to reach 3 kilograms of body weight as compared to only 45 days for standard birds. So that means for broiler producers, instead of raising 5 flocks of standard broilers every year, they could only raise 4 flocks of slow growing birds. Okay, so that significantly reduced their profit. Now, on top of that, the feed conversion ratio for slow growing birds is much worse. So in poultry production, even 0.01 difference in the feed conversion ratio can have a big economic impact. And here, the slow growing birds had a 0.23 higher feed conversion ratio than the standard birds. So this raises an important question here. Is it worth sacrificing such a significant feeding efficiency for only a slight welfare improvement, right? And in another study funded by USD NIFA, we look at how the stocking density affect the gait score. So there are different recommendations for broader stocking density for for instance, 27 to 29 kilogram per square meter from Global Animal Partnership and 32 to 44 kilogram per square meter from the US National Chicken Council. So our results show that at 4 weeks of bird age, the gait score wasn't affected by any of these stocking densities. Right? Now, by 8 weeks of bird age, the bird had higher, the bird has higher gait score as compared to week 4. Right? So this means the bird walking ability got worse with age. But again, there was no significant difference among the different stocking density. Right? So while reducing the stocking density from 44 to 27 might improve other welfare measures in broilers, which I don't know, but our data suggests that it does not improve the walking ability. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with the 5 freedom of animal welfare, but if not, it's a set of guidelines outlining the condition animals should experience during the production. So one of these freedom emphasize allowing animals to express their normal behaviors. So for poultry producers, who want to meet a higher welfare standards, so they will need to comply with some specific welfare protocols. And for instance, so the farmer need to follow the Global Animal Partnership protocol and get certified in order to sell their product in Whole Foods grocery store. Right? Now, these protocols often require assessing whether the birds can perform certain natural behaviors at the poultry farm. So my research group has been working on using the computer vision system as a tool to identify and analyze natural behaviors in poultry automatically. So for example, we developed some model to detect the preening behavior in laying hens and the stretching behavior in broiler chickens. So this approach offers a more efficient and accurate alternative to the traditional human-based assessment. And so we can also look at where the birds prefer to perform these natural behaviors within a pen, right? So this heat map here shows you the spatial distribution of the stretching and the preening behavior. So clear we see that the stretching behavior is not evenly distributed within the pen, right? So that brings up another interesting question. Can we arrange the feeder or water or other equipment within the pen to better accommodate these natural behaviors? Right? So the PLF is just a great tool and provide us some data and allow us to explore this type of management practices. And again, here's a video developed by Dr. Gan. So it shows a continuous identification of the preening and stretching behaviors in broiler chicken. So there is a counter on the left part. So whenever this model identify a preening and the stretching bird, so this behavior will be registered. Okay. So with this system, we can continuously monitor these two behaviors for a lot of birds at the same time, right? So this figure here shows you a complete profile of these two behaviors of 432 broilers in 24 hours. So if we manually count these two behaviors for this many of birds, so that's almost an impossible task, right? But the computer vision system just makes our work much more efficient. And we can see that the birds perform the preening and the stretching behaviors not only during the daytime, but also at night. So if someone plans to work out with some system or something to accommodate this two behavior, it's wise to make it applicable to both day and night. And just some biological meaning from this data. And we also look at the impact of stocking density on the broader comfort behaviors. And this figure shows the stretching behavior across the 4 stocking densities. And we still need to do some statistical analysis, but from an initial look, there doesn't seem to be a notable difference among these densities. So because some people assume that reducing the stocking density encourage more comfort behavior, more natural behavior, but it's important to have the data to support or validate these assumptions, right? Otherwise, producer might sacrifice their profit without actually achieving the expected welfare benefits. So now the image processing is a great tool for monitoring the group behaviors in poultry, but it's very challenging to differentiate individual birds within that group because all birds just look similar, right? So to study the individual variations, my group has been using the wearable sensors like RFID and accelerometer to monitor their drinking, feeding, and nesting behaviors. So in the first photo here, you can see that we put a RFID tags on the bird's neck and place the antenna right next to the nipple, next to the nipple drinker here. So whenever a bird comes to drink, we know which bird it is, how long it stays, and how often it comes, right? So we did a similar research, similar setup for the feeding behavior as well. And the photo on the right shows you a bird carrying an accelerometer, which monitors the bird movement and behavior. And here is another example using RFID, but this time to monitor the feeding and drinking behaviors in laying hens housed in an enriched colony system. So the system was donated by Big Dutchman. We spent a lot of time modifying it into a system that continues to monitor the feeding and drinking behavior. So it's just the control and data acquisition system with a simple user interface. And so this figure shows the daily feeding activity of all the 50 individual hens housed in that colony system. So each dashed line here represent the feeding activities of one bird, and each dot meaning that the birds was eating at that time. So you can clearly see that the birds do not eat at night, but periodically eat throughout the day, right? And also there's a lot of variations in feeding patterns among these individuals, right? So these wearable sensors are very useful tool for detecting the individual bird behaviors in the lab setting, but using them in commercial production is still a challenge due to the high cost. And also, for broader chicken, they grow very fast. And even in lab studies, we have to adjust the size of the collar and harness very often, which could be time consuming. Okay. So let me just share you some of our work using the robot in poultry production. So in this research, we try to reduce the floor eggs in cage-free system for laying hens. So in cage-free housing system, hens can move freely within the house, right? So majority of the eggs are laid in the nest box. So, and those eggs can be automatically transported to the egg processing room by the egg conveyor belt. But hens can also lay eggs on the floor. So for those eggs, we call them floor eggs. And the floor eggs have to be collected manually, which can be very labor-intensive task. So in this study, we test whether running a ground robot can correct the floor laying behavior in laying hens, right? So the idea was quite simple. So let the robot run or walk, on the floor and signal to the hens trying to lay eggs on the floor, like, hey, if you don't want to be disturbed, please go back to the nest box and lay your eggs there, right? So this figure shows the result. So at the beginning of this experiment, we intentionally allow the birds to develop the floor laying behavior, right? So as you can see that 70% of the eggs were laid on the floor. So in the first 2 weeks after starting the robot, the floor egg production dropped to 40%, right? That's significant. However, after 2 weeks, it did not decrease further. So the hen had quickly got used to this robot and no longer saw it as a disturbance. So interestingly, some hens even stood on top of this robot and play with it. So this was very interesting and made us curious about how poultry respond to the robot in the commercial farm. Right? So then one of my students investigated the poultry response to the ground robot and aerial robots. So he used the avoidance distance as a response indicator. So basically the avoidance distance refer to the distance between the bird and an approaching object at the moment when the birds start to retreat. Okay. So a longer avoidance distance indicates a higher level of fear in the birds to that approaching object. So this distance is useful information, especially when you need the robot to do some farm work, because first, a certain avoidance distance is necessary to prevent potential harm by the robot to the birds, right? And secondly, the robot itself also requires a clearance area to effectively carry out its tasks. So to determine this avoidance distance, my student just run this robot along the feeder line, and once he identified a target bird, he turned this robot and run this robot towards this target bird. And at the moment when the birds start to retreat, he determined the distance between the bird and the robot by using the video recorded by a top view camera. So this is the result. So the results show that avoidance distance decreased as the birds get older. So that means less fear for older birds, right? And we also examined whether the frequency of ground robot operation affect the avoidance distance. To test this, we compare the daily operation where birds can see the robot every day versus operation only twice a week. Okay. So the result indicated that the daily robot operation led to shorter avoidance distance compared to twice weekly exposure. So this means that frequent interaction with the robot may accelerate the bird's acclimation process and reduce their fear response to the robot, right? Now, from practical standpoint, this means that if a robot product requires a certain clearance area to function effectively in the poultry house, additional strategy may be necessary to maintain the space once the birds become accustomed to the robot, right? So this strategy could be, for instance, install a controlled noise or a nudging bar or some other things just to ensure that the required clearance is preserved. And for drones, the avoidance distance can be expressed in different ways, but we use the distance between the ground projection point of the drone and the retreating bird. So as indicated by the dashed line in this figure. So I'm not going to talk too much about the results. Okay. So these two videos here just show you the response of poultry to both the ground robot and the drone. So there's probably no welfare concern when you fly a drone overhead of the beef cattle, right? So because beef cattle are pretty calm with this with the drone, but poultry has natural fear to airborne objects. So as they could perceive them as a potential predator, like eagles, right? So there's a common assumption that drones are not suitable for use in poultry houses. So however, if you look at the figure, the video here, while the birds do move away from the drone, their response is not extreme or erratic. Right? Okay, so this is another robot. It's called Scout system that can monitor the environment, production, and animal data at the same time. So this is an investment by UTF Research 4 years ago, and we installed it in a chicken house of our collaborating producer. And this is one of the few robotic systems being used in commercial poultry house. And it is a seating mounting system that can roam and scan the entire chicken house once every 2 to 3 hours and continuously monitor a list of 14 parameters from ammonia concentration, airspeed, CO2 concentration to some light intensity and environmental noise. Okay. So it's a very robust system. And this system automatically generates a summary report every day using all its gathered information. And this report could include the average, maximum, mean value of these parameters, and also the percentage of time these values fall within the optimal production, within an optimal range or outside this range. Okay. Now, it can also identify the dead birds using its visual and thermal images and pinpoint their location on a map. So this feature, is a very useful feature to save time by allowing farmer to quickly find and remove the mortalities. And it also can detect the wet litter spots. Okay. So in this figure on the top, the red dots represent the dead birds, and the green dots represent the wet litter or wet bedding material. Okay. So unfortunately, the manufacturer just discontinued this product last year, and likely due to the high cost. So this system cost $50,000. So if you ask whether any broader producer would be able to afford this, I don't expect anyone would be able to do that. But the concept is promising, and with a more affordable version, there could be a real demand. Okay. Now, just some take-home messages. The U.S. Producers are facing increasing challenges, including labor shortage, production scale, large production scale, disease outbreak, welfare concern, and farmland loss, right? And also, PLF offers solutions to address some challenges in poultry production, welfare, and management. And commercialization of PLF in poultry sector lags behind as compared to swine and cattle. And we see that perspectives of PLF differs between academia and industry. Right? And we also see that different PLF technologies have been used in poultry research to address different aspects in the production. And this PLF technology can collect a vast amount of data which are unattainable through manual methods. Now, with this large amount of data, we definitely rely on animal and poultry scientists to interpret the biological implication of this data. And then translate this data into evidence-based guideline that can truly enhance the poultry production and the welfare. So I'd like to thank all my students, research associate, and my collaborators, and also my sponsors. So without their support, we would not be able to conduct this research. And also thank you all for inviting me and give this opportunity for me to share this information. So with that, I'll see whether we have time for any questions. Thank you.